How do I deal with annoying behaviours in our group space? Welcome to Perfection's Antidote. I'm Belinda Brummer.
And I'm Tracy Kites.
We're on a mission to help you navigate the situations you might find yourself in at work. In each episode, we'll bring you
one question,
2 perspectives,
3 takeaways. Our aim here is to keep it real, simple, filter-free.
If you enjoy learning tools that help you lead and work better, subscribe to this podcast and please do leave a review. If you have any questions for the show, please send them to us. You'll find a link about how to do this in the show notes. Tracy, we have a question today from a fellow called Dermot in Northern Ireland. He says he works in an advocacy organisation and he says he is losing his mind here. He says, my co-worker's constant pen clicking is driving me up the wall. I've asked them to stop, but they say it helps them focus. I'm this close to snapping and shoving that pen somewhere unpleasant. How can I keep my cool and get some peace? It feels like a laughing matter, Tracy, but actually, if you've been in this situation, it's not a laughing matter. So, to cut to the chase, how can Dermot deal with annoying behaviours in a group space?
Yeah, you're right. It's easy to smile or laugh over things like this, but actually they do cause lots of conflict in office spaces, I think. And it's useful to develop the skills of leadership to deal with those things when they're small. Sometimes if we leave things like this and allow the frustration and anger and all of those things to build up over time, problems that are seemingly small will grow a bit monstrous. They grow lots of arms and legs and they're much more difficult, I think, to deal with. So my first thought is always deal with this kind of thing while it's still a small problem, because small problems are much easier to deal with. I think that as human beings, we tend to imagine that people do this stuff to annoy us. And people do it deliberately, and that makes us feel more emotional, more angry about those things. But more often than not, people are doing those things unknowingly. And I think once people realise that they're, causing the distress and frustration that they are, most people want to deal with it. They want to do something about it. So for me, I think the first thing to say is be able to give somebody a good piece of feedback. Know what the components of a great piece of feedback is. And great piece of feedback from my research always come quickly, in a timely way, and they're really simple. One of the things that we think we've got to do is dress it up, fluff around, but I've never spoken to anyone, and my research certainly threw up, that when somebody receives a piece of feedback, the thing they want most of all is to have it quickly and to have it straight. Really simply, really straight, don't mess about with it. So for me, this looks like Dermot saying to his colleague, I noticed that you click your pen a lot. That's it. Doesn't come with a judgment attached. It doesn't come with, I feel like shoving it down your throat. It doesn't come with the emotion. It comes with just an observation. I noticed that you're clicking your pen a lot. Leave a little bit of space for that to sink in. Less than a second is enough for someone's brain to kind of click into, oh, well, okay, and to be thinking about it. And then move on with the conversation again in a really simple, non-judgmental way. I'm finding it really difficult to concentrate and focus. Is there a way that you can get whatever you're getting from doing that without it impacting me or the rest of the team? And then stop talking. Don't fluff about with it. Hand it back to the person and enable them to say, oh God, I'm so sorry. I didn't realise that it was really hacking you off. Like it is. I think one of the important things that Dermot has said, though, is that his colleague has said that it helps him to focus. So sometimes understanding the principles of self-regulation is helpful. So all humans regulate. We all do things that help us to be focused, calm, and be able to sort of give our best in a particular situation. And certainly we become dysregulated, the more tired, the more emotional, the more overwhelmed we become. So pen clicking might be a sign that the colleague is self-regulating, so maybe a little bit stressed, maybe tired, maybe wrestling with something at the moment. And self-regulation, the ability to self-regulate, is important for that person to bring themselves back to a calm, unemotional, focused state, as he's kind of implied there. So it might be just a way that Dermot can help his colleague to find a different way of regulating, or perhaps be a little bit of a sounding board just in case they are a bit stressed, a bit, something's going on with them at the moment. But certainly most adults, if they're treated like an adult, are spoken to like an adult, will come up with an adult-based solution, in my experience. What about you?
My thinking is close to yours in relation to that self-regulation element that you spoke about, but slightly different. I think, one of the things that the clicking is it's a habit, and it's a habit that's learned over a lifetime. And to be honest, no amount of friendliness or feedback or jumping up and down or shouting or whacking the fella on the head is necessarily going to break that habit. It is feeding something, it is, whether it's self-regulation or something else, it is a habit that actually probably only he can consciously choose to break. And therefore, my focus then becomes Dermot. What can Dermot do in the moment, rather than try to help this guy break the habit? Because that's not really what Dermot is asking us to do, or asking himself to do in terms of his responsibility to this other individual. And the first thing that I would say is, well, first of all, acknowledge that it's a habit and that you're not going to change it in the long run, or it's going to take a long time to change. So be open and friendly in the moments when it happens, when it matters. Not all the time, but if, for example, there is a particular frenzy of clicking and that particular moment is driving Dermot crazy, be open, be friendly about it, and not just accept that or think that you've said it once and therefore you now have permission to be aggressive or shouty about telling that person to stop clicking the pen. It's about just every single time, just saying, oh my gosh, you're clicking the pen again, oh my gosh, blah, 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 and making a joke of it, making light of it, but drawing attention to it. Because I think, as you say, Tracy, the fella might not realize what he is doing and that it has the impact that it is having. And so being human about it, being open and friendly and non-confrontational about it is the one thing that Dermot can do. The second thing I think that Dermot can do is to look at the environment. It's really interesting that the pen clicker is saying that it's helping him to focus. And I think that's really interesting because what I have noticed in offices, that at times in those group working spaces, things can suddenly become very quiet. And so all the ambient noise disappears. And it can be where a whole team, for whatever reason, suddenly goes into a mode of focus. And therefore that pen clicking sound in that moment sounds exceptionally loud. And so it's probably not all the time that it's a pain. It might just be a pain to Dermot and the rest of the team when it's really quiet in the office. And so then this is about looking at the environment, having a look at where do you sit in relation to that person. What is happening around the person when that noise becomes more irritating or not? And is there something that Dermot can do, for example, putting headphones on and listening to some music, if that's the kind of work he does, that he can do that? Or in that moment when the office is becoming really quiet, is there a way to break that silence without breaking the focus? Is there another way to introduce ambient noise that is not disruptive, but that actually just takes the focus off of the pen and the clicking sound of the pen? So it's about the environment. When the focus is happening, when the pen clicking is happening, what can Dermot do to control his own environment? And then just every time, be friendly, make not a joke, because you don't want that can be kind of become quite bullying behavior and harassment, but it is having the kind of relationship with that person that you can actually say it in that moment in a way that brings that person's attention, and as you say, to what they're doing, and that they stop doing it in that moment. But again, it's a habit. It's self-regulation. What's going on beyond just that moment is important.
Yeah, there are a couple of things that you said that made me think. other thoughts, really. One is that regulation, so when we do activities in our lives that regulate us, they tend to be rhythmic. So it might not be the sound that Dermot's colleague is needing. It might be the rhythm of the pressing of the top of the pen. So it could be that he is able to find something else that's rhythmic. As an example of that, lots of people do stuff in their lives like drumming or running or, lifting weights or, any of those kinds of hobby type things that they find regulating in their life. But if Dermot's colleague is needing to regulate to stay focused, it could be that he thinks about something else that's rhythmic that he can do. So that's the first thing I was thinking. The other big thing that I was thinking from what you said is you're absolutely right. This is not a situation where people need to get angry or confrontational. And I know that leaders really fall into a deep hole when they start getting cross and start shouting and raising their voice and start being a little bit bullying. For me, there is never, ever, ever any reason to shout at somebody or to raise your voice in any way in the workplace at all, unless the building is on fire. But the minute you do that, the minute you start getting angry and out of control, because for me, raising your voice at work is being out of control, you start being very parental in your leadership style. If you become parental in your leadership style, so this kind of theory is called transactional analysis, but if you start that, what you'll end up doing is pushing a childlike response in your teams. So if you're a parental leader, you'll be getting childlike teams. And what do children do? They do the thing that their parents want them to do least of all. So you're much more likely to get even more pen clicking or whatever irritation it is if you develop a parental style of leadership. That's not conscious. That's not to say that people deliberately go into child mode, but you will push that. And you're much more likely to get what you don't want if you veer down that avenue.
The question we've pondered here was, how do I deal with annoying behaviours in our group space? Now, your power of 3. Talk about any problems while they are small. Be friendly and straightforward, and just let someone know what you're wrestling with in an unemotional, non-judgmental way. These are all the skills of giving great feedback. Understand the principles of self-regulation and why all humans need to do it. Help them understand that their behaviour is causing others some difficulty and perhaps suggest some solutions. Think about how you can help yourself more when you're irritated by something. What strategies can you put in place to block or distract yourself from the source of the irritation? Did something we talk about spark something in you? An idea or a memory? Please share it with us in the comments below. Follow us. We're real and unfiltered. This show is brought to you by, us. Tracy Kite is a leadership and management development specialist, executive coach, and author of Lead Like You Give an F. And I'm the founder of Boost Learning, a boutique ecosystem that nurtures better managers and leaders. I also help organizations amplify their culture, train their people, and build better community connections through podcasting.